Welcome to the Infinite and Beyond, the MIT Alumni Show. I'm your trusted host, Rob Kalwarowsky, MIT Class of 2010, world-renowned executive coach, author, and speaker. Each week, we are sharing the stories with our friends and classmates, fellow MIT alumni who've taken action to shape the world. We'll share what we've learned, top strategies, and bring our community together to help everyone achieve our goals. No, this show is not officially affiliated with MIT, so any views expressed on this show are of the host and guest only. This show is designed to build a community that trusts, connects, and shares with each other so we can all take action towards a better world. Let's get rolling. Welcome to the Infinite and Beyond MIT Alumni Show. I'm Rob Kalwarowsky, and of course, we have another special guest of 2010. As always, Troy Tamas is here. He's the co-founder and CEO of DoPlayDo. Troy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show too. And just for folks out there, I mean, of course, you're probably, well, you are watching this on video unless but you're watching this on video. You can see in the background, Troy's out in Japan. And so, of course, we got to share the story. Troy, how did you end up from MIT all the way to where you are today in Japan?
Yeah, so I guess I got to start that story probably before MIT. I had actually my entrance interview. And my interviewer at that point told me about this program called Misty. Probably the viewers who are from MIT already know what Misty is, but those who don't, Misty is this great program that MIT has that enables students to do an internship abroad while they're at school. And actually, their first program was with Japan. The whole program started with Japan. And by some chance, my interviewer mentioned this to me, right? And I'd always been interested in going to Japan. And so with the moment she said that, basically, yeah, I've got to do this. It sounds so awesome. And it's like, I've always wanted to go to Japan, never had the chance. But so not only do I get the chance to go there, but MIT basically pays for it. I get to spend not like a week there, but like 3 months there, right? And I'd also I'd always been interested in languages too. I've been wanting to learn. I took Spanish all through high school, but I was wanting to learn something more difficult, like an Asian language. So it's perfect. I studied Japanese for 2 years. I went out there. I did my Misty over in Yokohama. Then I came back, and then I had a year left of school. At that point, I kind of viewed that experience as like a fun experience that I had. Now it's time to finish up my school. And so I actually stopped studying Japanese. I, focused on everything else I wanted to do in my last year at MIT. And then I got this job offer in Japan. And the job offer was actually, it was through Misty, really. A guy, a Harvard alum who happened to have a connection with the Misty program. They were looking for an engineer to come out there because at the time their plan was to make like a satellite office in the Bay Area, right? Yeah. So anyways, again, it wasn't really my intention to go out there, but I got this opportunity. It seemed super cool. Like it wasn't, most tech jobs in Japan are in Tokyo, right? Like period. Right. This job was like in the middle of the tea farms in the mountains. So I was kind of like, what is this place? I guess this is kind of a phenomenon that's happened that, once Japan started moving a lot of its manufacturing jobs abroad, they converted some of these old factories into offices. And this is what happened with this company that I went to. So I took the job out there. While I was there, I met my now wife. We got married, had kids. And so ever since then, I guess my life has been kind of forever entangled.
It's so cool. Yeah, Japan's such a cool country. It's funny you say it's moved to kind of these middle of nowhere places. When I did my TED talk, it was in Kumamoto, and it was in a factory for Harada. So they make like arm robotics for car manufacturing. And yeah, it's in a it's kind of actually far from Tokyo, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty far. Yeah.
So Troy, I mean, tell us a little bit about DoPlayDo. I mean, I've read a little bit about it for folks out there, gdsfactory.com, to simplify the construction of your AI chips or your chips that you're going to use in AI applications. Tell us more.
Yeah. So most of us, we have our background in photonics, actually. I don't know if many of the listeners know what photonics is. But in short, in a nutshell, it's like making chips that instead of or in addition to have electricity running through them, they have light running through them instead. So it's pretty cool. What you can do is you can shrink these huge optical systems, what might have been like benchtop systems in the past, and put them onto a chip. And that might not only shrink existing systems, it might make new systems possible because now you can put let's say like 100 lasers on a chip, right? Which might have been unfeasible otherwise, and bring costs down, right? So this is it's used in multiple fields. The biggest example is in communications, data communications. So it's like two servers in a data center. They talk to each other, right? And those links used to be copper links, right? But now as the data throughputs have gone up and up and up, it makes more sense to have that link be optical, right? So now you need a component that's going to change the electrical signals in optical signal and back, right? So that's called a transceiver, and that's been kind of like the bread and butter for the photonics industry to date. But now there's a lot of other cool things too. Before I was doing this, I was working at a company. We were aiming to measure blood glucose in like a Apple Watch type device.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, these kind of spectroscopy applications too, you can shrink down and do a lot of interesting things. So on a bit of a tangent there, but photonics, kind of a niche field, right? The needs are a little bit different than electronics, right? And so the tools that are out there, we didn't find really served us well. And so I was actually at a conference like 6 years ago, and I met a guy who was telling me about this open source project that he was building to basically make a new tool for designing, in particular in photonics, but in general, it's used for other things like quantum, other applications as well now too. And he was interested in what I presented there. He asked, is this something you think you could port to my new tool, right? And so I said, yeah, sure, let's give it a try. I was interested enough, and so worked with him a little bit on doing that, and kind of since then it's history. We've been talking for every week for the past 6 years on this open source project. It used to be only just the two of us contributing to it. Now we have like 80 contributors around the world, over 2 million downloads. It's become really popular. Wow. And, I think a lot of people connect and find the value in having kind of this open source base for their design. Because like, imagine you're a researcher and you're doing new things, right? I've been in the situation too, where you need to be in this like push and pull with a vendor to, change their roadmap to get them to do this weird thing that you need to do. And then they probably don't care. They probably don't care about this weird thing you need to do. But with open source, I mean, anyone comes and makes a pull request to us. And if it doesn't disrupt anything else, we'll probably say, sure, great. So, I mean, it's a great platform for emerging technologies. And we found a lot of value in it. Other people found value in it. And eventually we decided to make a company around this and try to make this really supported and sustained.
And so, of course, our audience out there is a lot of other MIT 2010s. What kind of applications or companies, if they're listening, would this be useful for?
Yeah. So photonics for sure. So any listeners out there, quantum. So quantum can mean many things. So people who are in it would know. But we actually have customers in kind of all the different kind of technologies of quantum. MEMS is an area we do have some people using it, and we'd love to grow more. So I'd say particularly if you're in any of those fields, I'd love to talk. There's people even who use it in analog. So yeah, I mean, anyone out there, I would say in semiconductors, anyone even who's maybe just in software and interested in looking at our GitHub, that'd be great too.
Cool. Folks out there, so I've dropped Troy's LinkedIn in the podcast notes. You can reach out to them there, and you can go to gdsfactory.com as well. Now, Troy, of course, as an entrepreneur, you've had a lot of learnings, as all entrepreneurs do. Can you share some of your top learnings that you've learned over the last 6 years?
Yeah. So I'd say the first thing is like, don't be afraid to ask for what you want. I find that a lot of people are, and it's funny. It's like, you know, if you don't ask, I mean, of course you're not going to get what you want, right? If you do ask, you might, you might not. You probably won't the first time you ask, right? But you'll at least get better at asking, right? And maybe a few times asking, I mean, you'll refine what you want, you'll refine how you ask it, and eventually you can get to where you want to go. I'll give the example. So we moved. I mean, I kind of cut the story a bit short there, but moved to Japan, moved back to the U.S., then moved back to Japan again, right? And moving back to the U.S. was kind of like half a career choice, half of like I think I could find more interesting jobs in the U.S. wanted to go here, and half like kind of wanted to give the experience to my family. By then we had 2 kids.
Yeah.
But eventually we found that we liked, living in Japan better. I still liked the work that I was doing in the US better. And so, I'll give credit to my wife that she's the one that pushed me to go and, ask my boss at the time, like, can I work remotely from Japan? And of course, as you might expect, the answer was no. The answer was no. But eventually I did get that answer to yes. And it was at the next job that I was at. But eventually I did get the answer to yes. And that's why we moved back to Japan. And I worked my previous job, the last half of it, I was working remotely from Japan. And then now I continue to do what I'm doing now, even though we're a US-based company, still from Japan here. So you'd be surprised what you can do if you just ask and put a little effort.
When you were at MIT, did you feel like you were the only one who didn't belong? Do you compare yourself with successful classmates? Do you feel like you're constantly needing to do more to feel like you're enough? Many of us feel that. I felt it too, but you don't have to feel that way anymore. You can get better results, achieve more, and feel more fulfilled doing it. I can say that because I've done it, and I coach my clients to do it too. I use scientifically proven methods, including internal family systems, values-based leadership, and habit-building techniques to transform your psychology and your life. These trusted strategies will get you results quickly, in some cases, even in our first session, and they'll last you for years. Now, my coach isn't just about learning. It's about taking action and creating results. Results that'll boost your confidence, unlock doors to opportunities you never thought possible, and equip you with strategies that only a select few ever master. But here's the thing. The longer you wait, the more opportunities slip by. Imagine what your life could look like just weeks from now. Having taken the first step. Take action now. Go to robkalwarowsky.com and book a complimentary call with me. Oh, I 100% agree. And it's something that none of us do enough. And actually it's a question that we have on the show coming up later, so I won't spoil it now. Now, Troy, you mentioned there's some really cool stuff happening in your field that is coming out. Like, can you give us a little insight into the future?
Yeah. Okay. I mentioned that the data center application is already there, is flying. One of the really interesting things, let's say at that base level, is that there's a lot of those who are in semiconductors probably know, but most of the ecosystem is like fabless, right? So there's fabs like TSMC is the most well-known one, and then a bunch of other design houses, sometimes small, sometimes big, who just make designs and they submit it to the foundries, right? I think one reason why we know that the bellwether that photonics is on the up and up is that TSMC is about to release a silicon photonics platform, right? So once that happens, I mean, that's going to just do so much for making the cost of tape out lower to go in volume, and bring out potentially a bunch more applications out into the market as well. Again, one of the applications that I brought up, that's I'll say maybe two applications that will be interesting. One is sensing. So like I was saying, we were previously working on making a glucose sensor. That's going to be, things like that will be very interesting. The other thing, LiDAR. I mean, you see, if you live in San Francisco, have been recently, you see all the Waymos going around, and the big orbs of their LiDAR modules, right? Imagine that you shrink that entire thing down into a little chip, right? And it's possible, right? It still needs some development to do that, but it'll bring the cost of that module down so much, and it'll get rid of that big ugly orb too.
It's so funny. When I think of LiDAR, all I think of is the archaeologist. I see these stories all the time, but it's like, we just scanned the Amazon and we found ancient civilizations here and there. But yeah, it's, obviously I'm not in San Francisco, but yeah, the Waymo car is really cool. Troy, I mean, as someone, now that you're leading a business, like, do you have any tips for folks out there for leading teams and for, dealing with this uncertainty, especially I was talking to Daryl Fairweather about this earlier today. In podcast world, Troy's will come out first, but about the new, economic situations.
About the new economic situations, leading teams to the new
And
economic situations.
And political situations.
Yeah. I mean, you can control what you can control, and you can't control the things you can't control, right? I guess that's the main thing in my mind right now. It's like, you have to be, alert of what's happening and aware if it's anything that's going to be touching your business, or even just touching kind of the hearts of the people in your business, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, you can't get too down in it, and the things that you can't control, right? You have to be ready to adapt to the things that happen. Of course, I don't want to be too project too much of an image of despair, right? Of course, there are things that we can do of voicing out to our representatives and whatnot, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, you control what you control, and that's what I like to focus on.
It's, yeah. I just wanted to have that question because it's always, as leaders, you see it with folks in your business, right? Is depending on the person, of course, some folks lean into that, some folks lean out of that, and it can bring that turmoil that you mentioned inside. And that's obviously disruptive for them as an individual, their families, and just their own well-being, but it's also it can be disruptive for their performance at work as well.
Yeah.
Now, I have to ask you, since one of your top tips was asking for help, of course, this community and this podcast is really about bringing the 2010s together right before our reunion so we can all help each other achieve our goals. How would you like to ask for help from your fellow 2010s to help you achieve your goal?
Yeah. I don't know. I imagine not so many people are like directly in kind of the line of work of what I'm doing. But there's network effects. I mean, you probably know someone. You're probably going to come at a party and talk to someone who's doing something similar to what we're doing. So say, hey, you heard about GDS Factory. It's a cool product, right? I mean, I would appreciate that. Again, I appreciate people who are maybe on the software side. And I've actually had this, a friend of mine doing this who's not related to semiconductors at all, but I show them what we're doing, and this is really cool. Can I contribute to your GitHub? Yeah, I love an extra pair of eyes there. I love to talk to other people. Of course, any people who have been started their own businesses in general. I do this all the time to reach out to people who are maybe at arm's length in my network, but I think we have kind of stories that are complementary to get some advice. So I encouraged you to reach out, and I apologize if I reach out to you in advance. But then also people who are maybe doing something with open source too. I saw Olga on your show a few
Yep.
days ago. So I'd love to connect with her again. Any other people in that space as well, so we can share stories as well.
Totally. I mean, this show has had a number of entrepreneurs on, and of course, going forward, I'm sure we'll have more. And so, yeah, we'll definitely make that happen for you, obviously for you, and for the folks out there. If you want to connect with Troy, of course, his LinkedIn is in the podcast notes, and also, you know, reach out to him. Right, have that conversation. That's what this MIT community is about, and that's what we're building here. Troy, how would you like to support the rest of our MIT community?
Um, yeah, I mean, I suppose it's kind of a reciprocal way. uh, Again, like I said, I've kind of, I mean, not just in my career, but in my life, I mean, I tend to reach out to these people who are maybe a bit of an arm's length way. If you find that my story is interesting, could help you in any way, I'd be happy to be there to help. So don't be afraid to reach out, on LinkedIn. If you ever stop by Japan, come stop by too, especially if you don't mind stopping by my little corner over here. Yep, but I'm always happy to meet new people and share stories. Both old friends and new friends. So.
Absolutely, it's fun, and it's something that I've been working on a lot too. Is reaching out to folks. Obviously, this show is part of it, but reaching out to folks in that arm's length space. Can you tell us maybe if you have a story off the top of your head about someone you reached out to recently that's really been interesting?
This has been interesting. Sure. Yeah, I actually, as I was starting the business, I was a little bit concerned. Our business has been like international from day one, right? And that's just kind of like a lot to process in your mind of like, there's not a lot of examples of that, right? So again, immediately my mind goes to like, is there any example of this in my network, right? And I happen to be a friend of mine, actually from the fraternity Sigma Chi, Joao Batalha, and he runs his business half in the U.S. and half in Portugal. So I reached out to him to, kind of pick his brain a bit on how he's doing it, how it's been going, and just kind of make sure that I'm not crazy, that this will work, that, I can still be out here in Japan, that we have people working from Europe as well, and we have customers all over the world too. So that was a great example of being able to talk to someone who's kind of been through those same shoes before. Uh, and being able to just give me of course there are some tips too, but just some assuredness as well, right? that I'm not crazy, that I can do this. Yeah.
Oh, you're not crazy at all. It's some of my leaders, they're working with global teams. Everyone as far as, I mean, not exactly quite as far as you, but Malaysia all the way to San Francisco, across Europe and in between. Um, Even a 2011 Eli Williams, he's working with folks who are in Europe when his business, of course, is in New York City, and he's based in New York City. So I think it's just part of the world now, and wherever you are, it's just, work one part is, as it's part, sometimes it's not necessarily at the same time, but also folks get up, or like we are right now, like it's afternoon for me, it's early morning for you. We can still make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, again, as long as you can adapt to it. I mean, I think there's been a lot of kind of whiplash now in the remote work trend, but I mean, I've been doing it for since before the pandemic, and I think it really works out great. I think there's a lot of value in still kind of having these opportunities to meet in person. I think that's like, you can't really exchange that for anything. But hey, it's more fun, right? That if we're all around the world, pick some fun place in the world, let's all meet up for a week or two. And like, I prefer that to being in the office every day. And I think it works about just as well for bonding. So that's my pick.
Speaking of Portugal, I've heard it's really nice.
Yeah, maybe that'll be our next location.
That's right.
Uh,
Troy, this is my favorite question for the whole show. How would you like to impact the world?
yeah. So I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is how we use our time, right? And I think if I can impact other people to use their time in a more creative and a more constructive way, and in a way that builds community, like I think that's the best thing. I'd be very happy with what I've done with my life. Um, I do think we're doing that right now with the open source project that we've made, for example. Um, I think this is also not my last stint either. I mean, I've actually, I mean, had the idea in my mind for a while now of doing something more with the like education for little kids as well. I loved like the project-based learning that we did at MIT. And I'd really like to kind of spread that as we can. I mean, I think it's great. It's a great confidence builder for one. Like I took in my freshman year at MIT the 200B for those who remember before it was toy design was solving real problems was the name of the class. And it was the coolest class we ever took because how they started it is Doc Wallace, the teacher, course two, you of course remember Doc Wallace.
Of course.
But he went around to different nonprofits and found real problems that were out there in the community, right? Problems that could be solved with like engineering solutions, right? And then he comes to a bunch of freshmen at MIT. Is like, okay, can you make a solution to this problem, right? I mean, all he gives you is a problem, right? And you have a semester to do it, right? And you know, as a freshman in college, like you're still pretty young. You're not that young. I mean, we're already in MIT, but it's so empowering to like make something that like and like you already see its effect. Like you make it, you see the people who you're going to serve, right? And you see it like in the field actually serving people, right? And it's like such a different level than being in a textbook and you know learning some mechanics, right? Saying, I mean, you know, it's such a motivator to be able to, you know, continue with your studies that you're going to be able to apply it someday. And it's not someday, it could be right now to do something real in the world. So at college, I think that was a great experience, but like, I don't think you need to wait to college, right? I think you could have that experience in middle school and high school. And I'd love to kind of spread that way of thinking, spread way of learning if I could.
That's something. I think there's some listeners out there that, and I got to rack my brain because I know some folks I think that have similar ideas. But I know there's some folks out there who resonate with that, and I'll see if I can find some folks that I remember that might be having a similar train of thought. Yeah, that's really incredible, Troy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still, you know, definitely way in what I'm doing right now. But I mean, I think I'd certainly be interested if there's other people with those same thoughts to bounce ideas. Maybe we could start to do something on the side as well.
Absolutely. Troy, last question, of course. Give us a little promo about GDS Factory and where we can find you and how do people reach out?
Yeah. Either reach out to me on LinkedIn or our website is gdsfactory.com. GDS, like good dog, Sam, factory.com. And there's links there to both our product and the open source. So you're free to browse there. Yeah. Maybe I'll ask you a question, Rob.
Yes.
Where we at? So I don't know. You've been talking to a lot of people from our class now. I've thought really since not just even reflecting on it now, but since I was at MIT, like this is probably like the most amazing group of people that I've met. Why do you think that is? Like, I think a lot of people have the impression that MIT is like, they have an impression like Revenge of the Nerds, right? Like, we could be all really smart and really boring, right? But it's definitely not the case. And I think you see that, I mean, listening to your show and the other people who are on here as well. I mean, has this thought come across your mind? Like, I was thinking about it a bit as I was listening to the other shows.
It's a great question. I always thought when I was in, when I got into MIT, is everyone around had, I mean, obviously they're straight A students, great SAT scores, like the academic side is sorted. But I think everybody else I met had something else that they were really good at. And like Troy, you're a swimmer. I'm a water polo player. Like we had Rosto on. He was on the
Volleyball, just to quickly correct you, but yeah.
Sorry? Oh, volleyball.
Volleyball,
sorry.
just to quickly correct you.
Yeah, sorry. But like Rosto was on. He was on the Slovakian swimming team. You know, Eric Royland was on. He was on the volleyball team as well. We had Abe Rosenfeld. He was a wrestler, right? Like, and it's not just, of course, it's not just limited to sports, right? But it's, you know, we had, I don't know if you remember Ariadne Smith, but she was with us in course 2, and she was like a world-class guitarist, right? Mm-hmm. And I think when people left, it's this natural progression is, and what I've seen over the show is people have had their that they've built wisdom and they've found ways to create fulfillment, like whether that's, you know, they're having a family, like we had Kathy on, and she was last week's episode for people out there, right? And she moved to Brazil for a while. Now she's working for herself in Boston, right? We had, you know, and so it's people have found their ways to create fulfillment and joy in their lives, which is beyond just academic performance or performance at work. And I think for me, of course, like I really struggled with my mental health for a long time until I had that personal transformation, which of course it still keeps going. It doesn't just stop and happen once, but I had that personal transformation, which led me literally to here. Otherwise, I'd be an engineer still in Edmonton, right? And so I think that's what we're seeing. And I've a lot of the folks on the show, like we're 15 years from college, and I see a lot of folks that are either like you, they've gone through this corporate track and now they're, you know, they've launched or they are launching a business, or they're making a career pivot, or there's some change that's happening kind of in this period, whether that's, you know, a little bit earlier, a little bit later kind of thing, but it's there. And I find that wildly interesting because, I mean, to be honest, that's what I do for work. And I find it interesting to either support people through those transitions or to dig in and help people that way, or I find people wildly interesting.
Yeah. I feel like MIT kind of has this culture of kind of embracing and encouraging eccentricities too, you know, and I feel like some people will kind of like in life in general just kind of suppress their eccentricities trying to fit in, and some people just kind of do the complete opposite, right? And I feel like most people at MIT are that mind. I mean, they do the complete opposite. I mean, think about like steer roast, think about like orange stew or stuff like this, right? Like, I always loved that about MIT, that it was like so weird by choice, right? And I think a lot of people carry that, you know, mentality with them too, and it kind of leads them to do a lot of interesting things as well.
It's definitely part of it, I believe, as well. Yeah. And I think for me, the hardest part was shedding a lot of that expectation, right? Is like, oh, because my parents, you know, they're probably like your parents, right? They're like, get the best grades, go to the best college, get a job, you're happy. And like, it worked for them,
Yeah.
but it was not for me.
Yeah.
And I think that was the hardest part for me, was making that transition to, and of course this is all like childhood experiences, right? But it's like making that transition from I'm following somebody else's playbook to
Mhm.
I'm following my own playbook.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And having the self-confidence to do that too, right? I think is really big.
Have you had any, of course you've had, but in terms of your own personal transformation, what can you share with folks out there? I mean, I'm sure you've done it multiple times, but is there one that's coming to mind that you could share with folks?
My own personal transformation. Uh, man, uh, I would say, I mean, the biggest crash course for me was becoming a dad. Especially
Yeah.
for me, it was very early. I mean, I was only 23. I was only a few years out of college. Um, so again, it was kind of a similar situation of like, well, what do I do? Who should I, who should I call? Who's kind of been through this that I can lean on a bit here? Um, but I mean, once you start having kids, and people with kids know, I mean, your life kind of flips around quite a bit, right? I mean, your biggest responsibility now is no longer you, right? And you're worrying about taking care of this new life, and I think it really starts to change your perspective on the world. Um, so I mean, I think even more so than starting a company or anything like that, I mean, having kids for me was the biggest personal transformation.
I love it. And I mean, there's so much we can learn from it out there. And I know the folks listening who have kids, they're there. Um, I'm not there yet, but we'll get there soon.
Yeah.
Troy, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom with us.
Yeah. Thank you, Rob. It was great doing this. And I love what
Everyone
you're doing
out
the show,
there,
by the
thank
way.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, everyone out there, thanks for listening. And hopefully, we'll see you all in May.
Yeah. Yeah. Look